Bernie Sanders answered a question about his belief in a Scandinavian welfare state-type system, and he did a brilliant job explaining his position. And I think this was one of those moments where if somebody was watching and they were listening closely, you can sway people. I think this may very well have converted many people to Bernie's way of thinking. Let's watch.
You have at various times, including just now, expressed the belief that the United States should look to Denmark and the Scandinavian countries for inspiration of the vision.
Yes.
Where the country is going, as you said, as was alluded to. I was born and grew up in Denmark. And these are countries where the government spends taxes and spends approximately twice the level of the United States. Mm-hmm. And while I am very sympathetic to many of your spending proposals, especially on the things you mentioned on early childhood and single payer and the like, I also know that these are countries that heavily tax everybody, not just the rich people, middle classes. They have consumption taxes on everything of 20%. So while I'm very sympathetic to what you say, my sense is still that you would like to spend as a Scandinavian, but not tax as one. Is that correct?
We have, the answer is, you raised some very good points. When we talk about healthcare, for example, okay, what my proposal would do is, I'm sure you understand, how much do you pay, or the people in Denmark pay for healthcare when they go to the doctor?
There is an approximately, it's about $10 copay for everyone.
$10. And how much do you pay when you go to the hospital? If you have cancer, God forbid, and you went to the hospital, how much would it cost you?
Zero.
Oh, it costs you zero. And how much is preschool, high quality preschool for the children in Denmark?
It would depend a little bit on the region of the country, but I'd say in $200 or $300 a month.
$200 or $300 a month, okay? And what about college in Denmark? Our kids can't afford to go to college. How much does it cost to go to college in Denmark?
Well, in fact, you get a government stipend to go to college.
In other words, not only is it free, they give you a stipend because they want to make sure, correct me if I'm wrong, that they take advantage of the wisdom of all of the kids. They want to make sure that every kid in that country gets the best education he or she can have. Is that correct?
If you have the appropriate grade average.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So here is the point. And your point is well taken. To provide quality, virtually free childcare, to provide free higher education, to provide virtually free healthcare, it costs money. Nothing is free. Taxes are high. You're right. But I would suggest that the average American would rather pay $3,000 more in taxes and see a $5,000 premium to a private insurance company disappear. They will be better off. In Denmark, my guess is, please correct me if I'm wrong, probably the per capita cost in healthcare is half what it is in the United States. Is that a good guess?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. So the point is, they are able to run a high-quality healthcare system, probably better than ours, at half of the cost, because it's a public healthcare system. But to answer your point, and it's a fair point, nothing is for free. But I believe in a kind of society which is different than Ted's does. I want to see all of our people, the young people, the old, the poor, the working class, be able to get the education they need, the healthcare they need, the job training they need. Does it cost money to do that? It does. But I believe at the end of the day, that is the kind of nation that the American people would like to see us become.
That was inspirational. That was informative. And understand that the guy who Bernie's talking to there is a conservative. That guy's a conservative. He works for a conservative institute. And that, by the way, that's what a Scandinavian conservative looks like. When Bernie's asking him questions about, oh, hey, so how does it work in Denmark? What's this, this, and this? Guy's like, well, yeah. So how much does it cost to do this? Well, yeah, okay, that's free. So, and what does it cost to do that? Well, okay, yeah, that's free as well. And your per capita cost for healthcare is half that of the U.S. Well, okay, yeah, that's true. He's talking to a conservative. Listen, if Americans knew, and this is a good starter kit here, but if Americans knew just how screwed over they were and how much their government was sticking it to them, there would be a revolution tomorrow. I mean, The point that's most important there, and this is a point that I think Bernie should stress more often, is that, oh my goodness, your taxes are going to get raised. That's, how Ted Cruz spins this and smears Bernie and misleads and lies about democratic socialism or social democracy. But what else did Bernie say there? He doesn't tell you the other half of the picture. Oh my God, your taxes might get raised by $3,000. But you were spending $5,000 for private health care. So you see the math that goes into this? And there's an economics professor from University of Massachusetts who's an expert on Medicare for All who has great framing on this that I'm now going to use because it's totally accurate. Those are private taxes. So when you have to come out of your pocket for daycare, when you have to come out of your pocket for college, for healthcare, with co-pays and premiums and deductibles and all these ways that they get you for your money, that's not... So conservatives would say, they're going to raise your taxes. Bernie wants to raise your taxes. But he is net saving you money, even in the instance where he would raise your taxes, because you already pay private taxes out the wazoo. What is that? So the government says you have to get health insurance. So you go get health insurance. Well, then guess what? Every single time you pay a premium or a copay or a deductible or anything when it comes to healthcare or health insurance, that is effectively a tax. You're just paying a tax to a for-profit private health insurance company. And the for-profit company, by definition, is taking more of your money because they're for-profit. There is no middleman. There is no rapacious for-profit middleman if you do a public system, if you do a Medicare for All system. So you are saving money, and that's exactly what Bernie's describing there. That if you do the math on the system he prefers versus the system that a guy like Ted Cruz prefers, you get to keep more of your money and you get all of the benefits of universal health care, free college, so on and so forth. So, and that is such an important point. And then, okay, so here's one thing that I realized as I was watching this. Bernie does kind of contradict himself a little bit because he says here, perhaps the taxes of the middle class would go up, but you actually net save money because you're not paying the private taxes anymore effectively. So when you show the American people the math, I think they'll like that idea. That's what he says here. But then earlier he said, no, I actually literally want to cut taxes for middle class and poor people. Okay? And then Ted Cruz goes on, by the way, to hammer that point home. He thinks he finds a vulnerability in Bernie's argument, and then he harps away on it. The vulnerability being, wait, you did just say you want to raise Americans' taxes. Now, of course, he would never tell the second part of the argument, which is Bernie saying, but you are still net saving money even if I raise your taxes because I'm getting rid of the private taxes. But what I would argue is, and this is just me now, I'm not speaking on behalf of Bernie Sanders or anybody else who might call themselves a democratic socialist or a social democrat or somewhere on the political spectrum around there, but in my mind, you don't need to raise taxes on middle-class people and poor people in order to afford these basic things that other modern nations have. Why? Because we already take our money, we're already taxed at, it's about 25%, I think, and they go on to say that in like Denmark and in Scandinavian countries it's about 45%, so they are more highly taxed than we are. But we're taxed at that rate about 25%, and then guess what? All that money is going towards, the military-industrial complex. We spend trillions of dollars on our military. We have 900 military bases around the world, and it costs $100 billion a year to maintain. That's just one example. We got, no-bid contracts where these defense companies make, tanks and fighter jets, and they go sit in the middle of the Nevada desert because we have so many, we don't even know what to do with them all. We had the new F-35 cost over $1 trillion to make, and it didn't fly for a while. I think they finally got it to fly, but it was over $1 trillion. So we already, with the amount of money we already raise off that 25%, if you just reallocate the resources, you can afford universal health care and free college and even daycare and paid vacation time by law. You can copy some other developed nations where they have, like in some countries, you have the government pays a certain amount of your paid vacation, and then the company picks up a certain percentage of it as well. So all we need to do is cut the military-industrial complex. You could cut military spending by 50% and still have, you still have the U.S. be the world's #1 military by a mile and a half. So you could cut the military by 50%. You could cut corporate welfare. I mean, we give $4 billion a year to ExxonMobil for what? They say for research and development. Does one of the most profitable corporations in the world need incentive to do research and development? No, that's corporatism. They bought that. They give campaign contributions to politicians, so they send ExxonMobil and oil companies $4 billion a year. That's pay-to-play corruption. What if we had that money to actually spend towards other stuff? Cut the military-industrial complex, cut corporate welfare, cut big bank subsidies, $80 billion a year in quantitative easing to the big banks. Why? We don't need to do that. How about you cut Wall Street bailouts? How many we bailed out Wall Street? That cost trillions of dollars. And then assholes like Ted Cruz turn around and say, well, we can't afford healthcare. We can't afford college. What are you talking about? No, we can afford all of it if we spend our resources in an intelligent way. If you gave the American people index cards, one each, said, here's the list of things, you prioritize what you want your taxes to go to. Even the conservatives would say, okay, yeah, number 1, healthcare, number 2, whatever, roads, military, you go down the list. But I guarantee you paid vacation would make the list. I guarantee you education would make the list. Because even the conservatives, when given the option, go, let's prioritize rationally. The only reason we don't prioritize rationally is because our system is massively corrupt and it's an oligarchy. It is effectively an oligarchy. So you don't even need to raise taxes, and you can get all of those things that other modern nations have. So Bernie did a great job there explaining his views, explaining how he believes in a Scandinavian type welfare state system. He calls it democratic socialism. I think he's actually more of a social democrat than a democratic socialist. Democratic socialism being a little further left on the political spectrum than a social democrat. A social democrat kind of is fine with and supports the idea of living in a hybrid system where there's a chunk of socialism and a chunk of capitalism, regulated capitalism, and the government does a decent amount. It's a welfare state, so they provide the healthcare and the education and yada, yada, yada. Democratic socialism is a little further left on the political spectrum. If he likes Scandinavia, I think he's more of a social democrat, but he does a great job breaking down his belief system, and yes, I think that converts many people. Because it's not hard to make the case. It's saying, hey, wouldn't it be good if we had these good, awesome things that are positive? Like, that's what he's describing. So I do think that converted people, and I do think Bernie, in terms of American politics, he's really a transformational figure. There hasn't been this strong of an argument for leftism made since fucking FDR. And remember, FDR was so popular that after he died in office, the Republicans came up with term limits to try to make sure that guys like him don't get elected, because knowing if they get elected, they're never going to get voted out because they do things that are so popular.